lease to, has granted Barari DV Ghana Limited, a subsidiary of Atlantic Lithium, a 15-year mining lease to commence the construction and mining of lithium at Oya in the Fansiman municipality of the Central Region. That's where you come from, Raymond. So this morning we're joined by the Minister of Lands and Natural Resources, Samuel Abu Jinapor. We want to understand what this whole deal is about. What are the terms? What's in it for Ghana? And what is Ghana likely to benefit from this deal? Samuel Abu Jinapor, good morning, and thank you very much for joining us.
Good morning, Winston, and a very good morning to your cherished listeners.
Yeah, so, we saw the story that caught our attention, the fact that, yes, we all knew that we had discovered lithium in Ghana. We know its importance, and now we say we've granted a 15-year mining lease to Barari DV Ghana Limited, which is a subsidiary of Atlantic Lithium Limited. Tell us more about that, and most importantly, the terms of this lease.
Well, thank you very much, and thank you for having me. As you pointed out, sometime in 2017, Atlantic Lithium, after completing prospecting and exploration of the Ewoya concession, discovered lithium in commercial quantities. But we were hesitant in getting into negotiations with the company because we believe that we should treat these minerals, these critical green minerals, differently from what we've done in the past. And therefore, we had to get a policy framework approved by Cabinet on the 27th of July this year, which set out the framework within which these minerals will be exploited. And this is what gave us the basis to get into negotiations with Atlantic Lithium. And after almost 3 months of negotiation, we've been able to close a deal with this company. And as you rightly asked, what is the need for the country? And really what is the need for the country is that the terms of this mining lease or this agreement is fundamentally different from the previous arrangements we've made with other minerals. And you will see, if you examine the agreement which is being signed, that the standard royalty rate in our country for all minerals is 5%, max 5%. On this occasion, we insisted and we negotiated a 100% increase to 10% royalty rate. So it means that royalties to the state is going to be 10%. Number two, the standard state free carried interest, which is the shares the state hold without having to pay for it, is 10%. On this occasion, we've been able to negotiate 13%, which is a 3% increase. And thirdly, and in my view, quite importantly, which is also consistent with the policy which was approved by the Cabinet, which said that there should be a minimum Ghanaian participation of 30% in the exploitation of the green minerals of our country, is that in addition to the 13%, the Minerals Income Investment Fund is acquiring an additional 6% shares in the mining company and 3.06% shares in the holding company, which is Atlantic Lithium, which is the company which is listed on the Australian and London stock exchanges. And so when you put all of that together, it will mean that government participation or state participation stands at 19%. And further, we are insisting that the company will list on the Ghana Stock Exchange. And listing on the Ghana Stock Exchange will mean that late pension funds and private sector players can further acquire shares in this company. And ultimately, the goal is to have a minimum Ghanaian state participation of 30%. There are several other components of this deal. But the final one I'll mention, and I think that the most important of all, is the arrangements we've made for value addition. Government is insisted, the president is insisted that we should not export green minerals of our country in their raw state. And so Atlantic Lithium has been committed to beginning feasibility studies for the establishment of a chemical plant 4 months as from yesterday, which is the day the lease was signed. Secondly, we have also insisted, and we've gotten them to commit, that in the event where they do not establish a chemical plant and a third party establishes a chemical plant in Ghana, they will be required to sign off-taker arrangement or agreement with this company and feedstock or give raw material to the company to thrive. And so if you ask me what is in it for the country, a whole lot, including community development, 1% development fund, which is going to be established 1% growth and sustainability levy, which they are going to pay. So when you look at this in its totality, this is a remarkably different deal, remarkably different mining lease we signed with Atlantic Lithium in respect to the exploitation of lithium in Ewoya. And I think that is going to be of great benefit to the Ghanaian people.
Just a bit curious here, because we've talked about increasing, the standard royalty rate from 5% to 10%. What did we propose in the conversation, in the discussion? Did we go with 10?
Well, we obviously went with our maximum position, and they also came with their maximum position as it is with all negotiations. But after back and forth and after intense negotiation, this is where we got into. And we believe that this is a pretty reasonably good deal for Ghana.
Talking about our maximum position, what was our maximum position?
But I wouldn't be able to tell you now. I can furnish you with that. But the point is that 10% is 100% or 5%. And that across the industry in Africa and the world, this is one of the highest you'll get. I think in Mali also, Mali is getting 6%. In Zimbabwe, I think they are doing 5% or so. So 10%, if you speak to any pundit in the industry, that is remarkable. That is very high.
Great. Another concern, there are those who have, but I'll get to that shortly. But the other point is, has this been approved by Parliament?
Well, we are going through the process. We don't have to have the approval now. The process is that you get into negotiations, as we've done. You get the outcome of the negotiations. You sign a mining lease, as we've done, as was determined by the Supreme Court in the Eastern Quebec case. We have to have parliamentary ratification as a matter of necessity. And so we will take this lease to Parliament, and the Parliament will deal with it as it deems fit. Yeah, so we will definitely go to Parliament.
And as it goes to Parliament, would I be right then to say that this is not final and it could change once it gets to Parliament?
To that extent, it's not final, because Parliament has a mandate for ratification of mining lease, pursuant to the teaching of our Constitution. So we will do that. We will go to the Parliament, and when we go to Parliament, the matter will be within the bosom of Parliament, and they will deal with it as they deem fit.
Another question is that, so yes, we know that in the past when we're looking for mineral resources, particularly oil and oil, because we didn't have it in the country at the time, we resorted to foreign entities. But today that we know, and we have lots of Ghanaians doing well, couldn't we have found any indigenous Ghanaian firm to start this, explore and eventually get it and be in charge of it, instead of talking about a minimum 30% Ghanaian ownership?
Well, that's a very good question. It's a very, very profound question. And the more Ghanaians we get involved in the mining industry of our country, the better for us. We've done a whole lot, and I think we have to do a lot more to ensure that we indigenize our mining industry, the natural resource enclave. And I want to say literally all the resources of our country. That is how Johannesburg was built. And when people ask the question, why is Obuasi or Takwa not like Johannesburg? It's simply because the minerals of Johannesburg are owned by South Africans. And those of our country are not owned by our countrymen and women. But we're working to ensure that. But I should point out, though, that this particular project has, in addition to the 19%, some Ghanaian participation. There are Ghanaian private sector players who hold shares in the local company, the subsidiary company of Atlantic Lithium, which is a company we've granted a mining lease to. So there is some Ghanaian participation.
Ghanaians own shares in there?
Yes, that is so.
Which
from the very get-go, in fact, from the beginning, the shareholding structure was majority Ghanaian. But the individuals have leveraged the shares as is their right, and the state cannot compel them not to. And which is meant that it is now foreign owned, majority foreign owned. But there are Ghanaian there is Ghanaian interest.
Do you know the Ghanaian interest? Do you know the Ghanaian interest in the Barari DV company? What percentage of Ghanaian interest?
I do, but I will. It will be improper for me to disclose that. You can check it out. You can conduct a search. in the local company, you will see that there is Ghanaian interest. But it's not enough. And I agree with you. It's not sufficient. We have to do a lot more. And that will mean that the local content, local participation framework we have, we should encourage a lot more Ghanaians to take advantage of that. And if you allow me, let me give you one example. With the signing of this lease and eventual ratification, hopefully by Parliament, when the project begins, we have a whole local content regime, which I believe is robust enough, which will have Ghanaians participate at the highest level in terms of the mining operation. I mean, for example, contract mining, underground pit contract mining is supposed to be exclusively Ghanaian. And that is what is going to happen in this case. So Ghanaian companies can step forward and participate in that, and a whole lot. But at the point of ownership, the Ghana Stock Exchange, the listing on the Ghana Stock Exchange offers another opportunity for Ghanaians to acquire shares in this company. And ultimately, as we've done in the area of gold, where we now have a company, Asante Gold, which is wholly Ghanaian owned, majority Ghanaian owned, as we're trying to do with bauxite, Rockshore, which is 100% Ghanaian owned, Ghana Bauxite Company, which is majority Ghanaian owned, and several other aspects of our mining industry. We believe that we should work with Ghanaian private sector to ramp up their participation in the mining industry in our country. It's the only way our state will benefit optimally.
Great. But, before you go, I know that you'd have to do other things, but someone just sends me a question and says, now that you have the Minister of Lands and Natural Resources, it will be important to ask him about the fight against illegal mining. They say it's been a while since they heard from you. Galamsey, not a lot has been done on that front, Honorable Minister.
Well, that is a very important question, and I'm scheduled to have a press interaction on the 1st of November, I believe, to update the country on the fight against illegal small-scale mining. A whole lot is being done. There's absolutely no two ways about that. A whole lot is being done on the enforcement aspect and the reformative aspect, and significant interventions are being put in place. Some progress is being made. Of course, we are not out of the woods yet, and the situation is not under full control. We never, if you want, tickled ourselves into thinking that it was going to be an overnight effort. It will require consistent, concerted effort over a period of time, anchored on integrity and transparency, to get this sorted out. But to direct answer to your question, nothing is being done or a lot is not being done. A whole lot is being done on a bi-weekly basis. Operation Halt is launched to deal with endemic Galamsey areas in our country on the fortnightly basis. Putting in place a whole lot of measures to ensure that the licensing regime of small-scale mining, to ensure community mining is increased and becomes a lot more prevalent in mining enclaves of our country. And the whole gold catchers are being distributed to ensure that the extraction of gold from the ore is done responsibly, and so on and so forth. So we will be updating the country in due course. But if I have to answer your question, as you've asked, a lot is being done. No two ways about that. We are not relenting on it.
Well, just this Monday, we aired one in a series of 3 documentaries, Poisoned for Gold. And as part of that, scientists have actually conducted tests on 10 major rivers across the country and have revealed high levels of dangerous heavy metals. The Oda and Cobra, Tano or Fin, and others have lead, arsenic, chromium, and cadmium in there. And scientists have actually warned that swimming or using these waters for farming presents major health risk. Honorable Minister, the efforts should translate into improved conditions, and in this case, improved water bodies. The evidence doesn't support that.
Well, first of all, Abina, I don't shirk responsibility in any form or shape. It's the responsibility of government to tackle illegal small-scale mining, as it is the responsibility of the Ministry of Lands and Natural Resources, and for that matter, my personal responsibility. And we are discharging that responsibility to the best of our ability within the constraints and all of that. So that is being done. Now, that said, you always have to situate some of these research and scientific examination in their proper context, and they are most welcomed. These kinds of interventions are most welcome. First, listen, the issue of illegal small-scale mining, you should take a historical look at it. The water bodies of our country have been polluted for decades through the actions and inactions of many players in our body politic. And I, for example, had a discussion with the University of Mines and Energy, and was trying to understand how we can get our river bodies cleaned up as quickly as possible. And the suggestion that was made to me by the scientific community of that university was that given the kind of pollution, if you were to even have the water bodies undisturbed for a period of 10 years, 20 years, you will still have some of these chemicals which you've just mentioned. And so what is the point I make? Yes, this is a disturbing report, and we ourselves get a fortnightly report on the turbidity levels of the river bodies of our country. And some of the rivers of our country get improved, some are deteriorating, and it disturbs us, just as this report will disturb me. But the suggestion that is perhaps as a result of illegal mining activities within the past 2 years or 3 years, this is the point I'm making, is incorrect. The situation we find ourselves in, and sometimes I see reports about a Prampraba forest and this and that. You will find that some of the pictorial evidence you put out is as a result of decades of destruction, years of illegal mining activities, years of actions and inactions. But I should conclude by reiterating that is not by any stretch of imagination passing the buck or checking responsibility, not in the least. But it is just so that when we're having a discussion, we put it in its proper context. And we will continue with the efforts we are making, and those efforts will yield the necessary results when we all pull our weight together. And when I say pull our weight, I mean all the components, actors in the body politic of Ghana, chiefs, local government authorities, private sector people, government, politicians, all of us will have a role to play, or do have a role to play. Okay. But what the government is required to do, I want to say and say so forcefully that we have not reneged on it, and we are not relenting in the least.
Okay. Well, Honorable, I think it will be important for us to have a conversation sometime next week, an extensive conversation.
It's long overdue.
Yes, exactly. So Samuel Adami would get in touch.
Just set it up.
We'll set up the conversation. Thank you very much for joining us, Samuel Abu Jinapor, Minister of Lands and Natural Resources, joining us this morning.